I haven't slept in 47 days. Not really. I close my eyes and see the spreadsheet, row after row of numbers that destroyed my life, each cell a small betrayal, each formula a calculated lie. My therapist says I need to let it go, but she doesn't understand that some betrayals don't fade. They metastasize. They become part of your DNA, rewriting who you are at the cellular level until the person you were before ceases to exist entirely. My name is Nathan Reeves, and I'm a forensic data analyst, or at least I was. These days, I'm not sure what I am anymore. What I do know is this: the person I trusted most in this world, the man I would have died for, systematically dismantled my life with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a spider. And when I finally saw the web he'd woven, I was already wrapped in silk, waiting to be devoured. This is the story of how my best friend destroyed me, and how I made sure he understood exactly what that felt like. I met Julian Vance on the worst day of my life, or what I thought was the worst day, back when I still had the luxury of not knowing how bad things could really get. It was September 2016, and I'd just been fired from my first real job out of grad school. Not laid off, fired. The distinction mattered to me then. I'd made a mistake in a quarterly report, transposed two numbers in a revenue projection that made the company look like it was hemorrhaging money when it was actually performing well. The error got caught before any real damage was done, but my boss, a vicious little tyrant named Gregory Marsh, made an example of me anyway. "Attention to detail, Reeves," he'd said, standing over my desk while HR packed my things into a cardboard box. "In this business, one mistake is all it takes. You're done." I was 26 years old, drowning in student debt, and suddenly unemployed in one of the most expensive cities in America. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 2 hours after they escorted me out, too humiliated to drive home, too ashamed to call my parents. That's when Julian found me. He pulled into the spot next to mine, and I watched through my peripheral vision as he got out of his car, a beat-up Honda Civic that had seen better days. He was around my age, dressed in a sharp suit that seemed at odds with the vehicle. He started walking toward the elevator, then stopped, turned around, walked back to my car and knocked on the window. I rolled it down, probably looking as pathetic as I felt. "You okay, man?" he asked. I wanted to say yes, wanted to preserve some shred of dignity. But something about his face, open, genuinely concerned, made the truth come spilling out. "Just got fired," I said. "First real job, lasted 8 months. He winced. "Marsh? How did you—" "I work on the 5th floor. Different division, but everyone knows about Marsh. He's fired half the analysts in this building." Julian leaned against my car. "What happened?" I told him about the transposed numbers, about how it was an honest mistake, how I'd been working 70-hour weeks, how I'd caught 3 other errors that quarter that saved the company actual money, but none of that mattered when you made Gregory Marsh look bad. Julian listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You're a forensic data analyst?" he asked. "Was." "Same here. Well, financial data analyst, but close enough." He pulled out his phone. "There's a firm I've been looking at. They're hiring. Small place, but they work with some serious clients. Law firms, corporate investigation units, that kind of thing. Want me to send you the listing?" I stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I know you got fired for giving a shit about accuracy," he said. "And I know what it's like to work for someone who'd rather punish honesty than reward it. Look, maybe nothing comes of it, but what have you got to lose? He was right. I had nothing to lose. Julian sent me the listing that night. I applied. 2 weeks later, I had an interview. A week after that, I had the job, and Julian Vance became the first person I called when I got the offer. The firm was called Meridian Analytics, and it was everything my previous job hadn't been. Small team, around 15 people. Interesting work. We analyzed financial data for litigation cases, corporate fraud investigations, divorce proceedings where one party suspected the other of hiding assets. It was detective work dressed up in Excel spreadsheets and SQL queries. Julian and I ended up working together on our first major case about 3 months after I started. A mid-sized manufacturing company suspected their CFO of embezzling funds. Our job was to trace 5 years of financial transactions and find the proof. We worked well together. Julian had an intuitive sense for patterns that complemented my methodical, systematic approach, where I built comprehensive models and ran every possible verification. He could glance at a ledger and spot the anomaly, the thing that didn't quite fit. He called it financial instinct. I called it terrifyingly good guesswork. "It's not guessing," he'd say, grinning. "It's experience. You see enough cooked books, you develop a nose for it." We found the embezzlement scheme. The CFO had been creating ghost vendors and approving their invoices for nearly 6 years, siphoning off almost $2 million. The case made our reputations at Meridian. Our boss, Patricia Delgado, started assigning us to work together exclusively. We became known as a team, the guys who could find money no matter how well it was hidden. But more than that, we became friends, real friends, the kind I hadn't had since college. Julian was the person I grabbed lunch with every day, the person I'd text at midnight when I found something interesting in a data set, the person who'd show up at my apartment with beer and pizza when a case was driving me crazy, who'd sit with me and talk through the problem until we found the answer. He met my girlfriend Sarah about 6 months after we started working together. We'd been dating for 2 years at that point, and I was starting to think about proposing. Sarah was a marketing manager for a tech startup, smart, driven, funny, with this way of cutting through my analytical overthinking and getting straight to the heart of things. "She's great," Julian said after the first time we all had dinner together. "You're lucky, man." "I know." "You gonna marry her?" I'd had 3 glasses of wine and we were walking back to my place. "I think so, yeah. I want to. Just need to save up for a ring that doesn't scream, 'I'm still paying off student loans.'" Julian clapped me on the shoulder. "When you do it, I want to be your best man." "You're assuming she says yes." "She'll say yes, trust me." He was right about that too. I proposed to Sarah in March 2018 on the anniversary of our first date. She said yes before I finished the question. Julian was my best man. He threw me a bachelor party that was exactly what I wanted. No strippers, no Vegas, just my closest friends at a cabin in the mountains, playing poker and drinking whiskey and talking shit until dawn. At one point late in the night, when it was just the 2 of us left awake, Julian got uncharacteristically serious. "You know I love you, right?" he said. I laughed, uncomfortable with the sudden emotion. "Little drunk there, buddy?" "I'm serious, Nathan. You're my best friend, my brother. I need you to know that." "I know you're mine too." "Good." He raised his glass. "To brotherhood, the kind that lasts forever." We clinked glasses. Drank. I had no idea I was toasting with the man who would destroy me. Sarah and I got married in October 2018. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Julian gave a speech that had people laughing and crying in equal measure. He talked about how we met, about our first case together, about how he'd never seen me happier than when I was with Sarah. "Nathan is the most loyal person I know," he said, looking directly at me. "He's the kind of friend who shows up, who keeps his word, who'd drop everything to help you, no questions asked. And Sarah, you're getting the best man I know, take care of him." Everyone applauded. Sarah kissed me. I shook Julian's hand and pulled him into a hug. "Thank you," I whispered. "Always," he whispered back. "The first 2 years of marriage were good. Better than good." Sarah and I bought a small house in a suburb we could almost afford. She got promoted to senior marketing manager. I got promoted to lead analyst at Meridian. Julian got promoted too. We were now both senior analysts working side by side on the firm's biggest cases. Life was stable, predictable, happy, and then everything started to crack. The first sign was so small I almost missed it. It was January 2020, right before the pandemic hit. Sarah had been working late a lot. Her company was launching a new product, and she was managing the entire marketing campaign. I understood. I'd worked plenty of long nights myself. But one evening, I came home early from a case that had wrapped up ahead of schedule, and I found her on the couch, phone in hand, smiling at something on her screen, not her work smile, a different smile, softer, more private. "What's so funny?" I asked. She jumped. Actually jumped. Then quickly closed whatever she'd been looking at. "Nothing, just a meme from work." "Can I see?" "It's stupid, you won't get it." Inside joke from the marketing team. She changed the subject. I let it drop. But I noticed that she started keeping her phone face down on the table during dinner. Started taking calls in the other room, started being vague about who she was texting. I told myself I was being paranoid. Sarah loved me. We were happy. There was no reason to worry. Then Julian started acting strange too. It began with small things. He'd get text messages during our work sessions and excuse himself to respond. He'd have lunch meetings he was vague about. Once I walked into his office and found him closing a spreadsheet so quickly it was obvious he didn't want me to see it. "What was that?" I asked. "Personal finance stuff, boring." But Julian and I had always shared everything about work. We'd consult each other on every case. It was unlike him to be secretive. I told myself I was reading into things. Stress, probably. The world was going crazy with COVID. Everyone was on edge. But the paranoia kept growing. Sarah started going to the gym a lot. She'd never been particularly into fitness, but suddenly she was going 5, 6 times a week, coming home flushed and energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. "You should come with me," she said one night. "Maybe. Who do you go with?" "Oh, just some people from work. It's nice to have the social time." "Anyone I know?" She hesitated, just for a second. "No, new people. The company's grown a lot." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. But some primitive part of my brain was screaming that something was wrong. Julian started cancelling our lunch plans. Just occasionally at first, then more frequently. He'd have excuses, client meetings, personal errands, doctor's appointments, all perfectly reasonable. Except Julian and I had been having lunch together nearly every work day for 4 years. We were creatures of habit. The sudden change felt deliberate. One day in March 2020, I suggested we grab lunch at our usual spot, a Thai place 2 blocks from the office. "Can't today," Julian said. "Got a thing." "What thing?" Just a thing, personal. You okay? Yeah, fine, just busy. He left. I watched him walk out of the building from my office window. He got into his car, he'd upgraded from the Civic to a decent Audi about a year earlier, and drove off. On impulse, I pulled up our firm's parking garage security system. We had access to it because we sometimes needed footage for cases. I scrolled back through the last few weeks, looking for patterns in Julian's comings and goings. What I found made my stomach drop. 3 times in the past 2 weeks, Julian's car had left the garage at lunchtime and returned exactly 90 minutes later. Always on days when Sarah had told me she was going to the gym during her lunch break. It could be a coincidence, but I was a forensic data analyst. I didn't believe in coincidences. I spent the next week in a state of controlled paranoia, gathering data like I would for any investigation. I started with Sarah's phone. I waited until she was in the shower one morning, then picked it up from the nightstand. She'd changed her passcode. She'd had the same code for years, our wedding anniversary, but now it was something different. I tried a few combinations, failed, put the phone back before she came out. At work, I became hyper-aware of Julian's behavior. I noticed things I'd overlooked before. How he'd smile at his phone in a way that seemed almost guilty. How he'd suddenly become interested in marketing, asking me questions about Sarah's work, her company, her colleagues. At the time, I'd thought he was just being friendly. Now it seemed like he was fishing for information. I checked our shared work calendar, cross-referenced it with Sarah's schedule, which she kept in a shared Google Calendar we'd set up when we first moved in together. The patterns were there, undeniable, damning. Every time Sarah blocked out gym in her calendar, Julian had a gap in his schedule. No meetings, no calls, nothing. I felt sick. But I needed proof, real proof, not just suspicious timing and gut feelings. I decided to follow them. It felt insane even as I was doing it. I was a grown man, a professional, sitting in my car outside my own house at 11 in the morning, waiting to tail my wife like some bargain bin private investigator. Sarah left the house at 11:30, dressed in workout clothes, gym bag over her shoulder. I followed her, keeping several cars back. She didn't go to her gym. Instead, she drove to a part of town I didn't recognize, a neighborhood of newer apartment complexes. She pulled into a parking garage. I couldn't follow without being obvious, so I parked on the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Julian's Audi pulled into the same garage. I sat there for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to run into that building, find them, confront them. But the analyst in me knew that wasn't how you built a case. Emotion got you nowhere. Evidence was everything. I waited. 90 minutes later, they emerged separately. Sarah first, looking flushed and happy, hair damp like she'd showered. Julian 10 minutes after, checking his phone as he walked to his car. I followed Sarah home. She walked in the door, kissed me on the cheek and said, "Good workout, I'm going to shower." "How's the gym?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady. "Great, really pushing myself lately." I nodded, smiled, watched her walk upstairs. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Sarah, listening to her breathe, wondering how long this had been going on, wondering if she thought about him when we had sex, wondering if every "I love you" for the past however many months had been a lie. I wanted to wake her up, demand the truth, but I didn't, because I'd learned something important in my years as a forensic analyst. People lie when confronted. They minimize, deny, gaslight. But data doesn't lie. Numbers don't have feelings or loyalty or self-interest. If I wanted the truth, I needed to treat this like any other investigation. I needed to build an airtight case. Over the next month, I became someone I didn't recognize. I installed tracking software on our home computer, the one Sarah used for work. It logged every keystroke, every website, every application. Technically illegal, probably I didn't care. I hacked into Sarah's iCloud account, changed the password recovery information so she wouldn't get notifications, started downloading her messages, her photos, her location data. I cross-referenced everything with Julian's patterns, his calendar, his credit card statements. I had access through our firm's expense system, his location data from his work phone. The picture that emerged was devastating in its clarity. They'd been sleeping together for 7 months. It started in June 2019. A work conference that Sarah's company had attended. Julian had been there too, doing a presentation on data security. They'd met at the hotel bar. One thing led to another. The messages were there, hundreds of them, deleted from her phone, but backed up to the cloud, preserved forever in digital amber. Sarah to Julian. I can't stop thinking about last night. Julian to Sarah. Me neither. When can I see you again? Sarah to Julian. It's crazy. We shouldn't be doing this. Julian to Sarah. I know, but I can't stay away from you. I read every message, studied every photo they'd sent each other, tracked every lunch meeting, every gym session, every fabricated excuse. The worst part wasn't the sex. It was the intimacy, the way they talked to each other, the inside jokes, the planning. Julian to Sarah. Nathan seems stressed lately. You think he knows? Sarah to Julian. No, he's just busy with work. He doesn't suspect anything. Julian to Sarah. Good. I hate lying to him, but I can't lose you. Sarah to Julian. I know. I hate it too. But what choice do we have? They talked about me like I was an obstacle, a problem to be managed, the husband who was too stupid or too trusting to see what was happening right in front of him. And the cruelest part, they were right. I hadn't seen it. Not until it was too late. I found photos they'd taken together, Sarah smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. Julian with his arm around her, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. There were videos too. I watched 30 seconds of one before I had to close my laptop and go vomit in the bathroom. I thought I understood betrayal. I thought getting fired had taught me what it felt like to have someone you trusted turn on you. I'd been wrong. This was different. This was violence without blood, murder without a body. This was the systematic destruction of everything I'd believed about my life. The smart thing would have been to confront them immediately, divorce Sarah, cut Julian out of my life, move on, but I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling something much darker. I was feeling methodical. Because as I sat there, reading through months of messages, tracking their patterns, documenting their lies, I realized something. I had a skill set perfectly suited for this situation. I was a forensic data analyst. I found hidden money. I uncovered fraud. I built airtight cases that destroyed people in court. And I had just spent a month building a case against the two people I loved most in the world. I had evidence they didn't know existed. I had access to systems they didn't know I could breach. I had information, leverage, and, most importantly, time. They thought I was oblivious. They thought I was safe to deceive. They thought they could manage me like a variable in one of Julian's precious spreadsheets. They were wrong. I was going to make them understand exactly how wrong they were. but not yet, not with anger, not with confrontation. I was going to do this the right way, the professional way. I was going to destroy them so completely, so thoroughly that when I was done, they would understand that betrayal has a price, and I was going to make them pay every cent. The first thing I did was take control of my emotions. This was crucial. The moment you let anger drive your decisions is the moment you make mistakes. And I couldn't afford mistakes. I continued acting normal. I came home every night and kissed Sarah. I asked about her day. I made love to her when she wanted to, even though it made my skin crawl. I pretended not to notice when she texted Julian right in front of me. At work, I was the same old Nathan, Julian's best friend, his partner, his brother. "You seem better lately," Julian said one day in April. "Less stressed." "Yeah, I don't know. I think I was just burning out. Needed to get some perspective." "Good. I'll worry about you, man." "I know you do," I said, smiling. "That's what brothers are for." He smiled back, completely unaware that I'd spent the previous night reviewing his credit card statements and cross-referencing them with the romantic restaurants where he'd taken my wife. Phase 1 of my plan was simple: gather more evidence, because what I had was enough to prove the affair, but it wasn't enough to destroy them. For that I needed more. I needed their financial information, their passwords, their secrets. Julian made this easy. We worked together. We shared files, systems, access credentials. He trusted me completely. Over the next few weeks, I quietly copied everything: his personal email passwords, his banking information, his investment accounts, his browsing history, his social media logins. Sarah was trickier, but the home computer gave me everything I needed. I had keyloggers capturing every password she typed. I had access to her email, her bank accounts, her credit cards. I started building profiles, detailed maps of their lives, digital and financial. Julian, I discovered, was more leveraged than I'd thought. He'd taken out a significant loan to buy the Audi. He had credit card debt. He was living right at the edge of his means, maintaining an image of success that was mostly smoke and mirrors. Sarah's company was struggling. The product launch she'd been working on had flopped. They were talking about layoffs in her department. She was stressed about money. I found emails to her mother asking to borrow cash, emails she'd never mentioned to me. These were vulnerabilities, pressure points. I filed them away for later use. Phase 2 was more delicate. I needed to understand their end game. Were they planning to leave me, to run off together? Or was this just a thrill, a secret they planned to keep forever? I found the answer in a message exchange from late April. Sarah to Julian: "I think I need to tell him." Julian to Sarah: "Are you sure? It'll destroy him." Sarah to Julian: "I know, but I can't keep living like this. It's killing me." Julian to Sarah: "What do you want to do?" Sarah to Julian: "I don't know. I'd love you, but I love him too, just differently." Julian to Sarah: "I love you too. We'll figure it out together." So they were thinking about coming clean, not out of guilt or conscience, but because the lying was becoming inconvenient for them. That decided my timeline. I needed to act before they controlled the narrative, before they could spin this as some tragic love story where they were the victims of complicated feelings. I gave myself 2 months, 8 weeks to prepare everything, and then I was going to burn their world down. In May, I took a week off work, told everyone I needed a mental health break. Sarah thought it was a great idea. Julian encouraged it. "You've been working too hard," he said. "Take the time, recharge." I didn't recharge, I planned. I rented a small office space under a fake name, set up multiple computers, created a dozen shell companies and dummy accounts, built the infrastructure for what was coming. I was thorough, methodical. I thought through every angle, every possible response, every way this could go wrong, and I started implementing the plan. Step 1, financial pressure. Julian's weakness was his image. He needed to appear successful, so I was going to make that impossible. I had access to his investment accounts. Over the course of 2 weeks, I made a series of trades using credentials I'd copied. Nothing massive, nothing that would trigger fraud alerts. Just bad decisions, buying high, selling low, the kind of mistakes an overconfident investor might make. His portfolio lost about $15,000, enough to hurt, enough to stress him, not enough to be obviously sabotage. For Sarah, I was more subtle. I knew her company was struggling. I also knew they were looking for someone to blame for the failed product launch. I had access to her work email. I created a paper trail, subtle things, forwarded emails to wrong people, CC'd her on company-wide messages complaining about the marketing strategy, made small changes to campaign documents that made her look incompetent. Nothing massive, just death by 1,000 cuts. By mid-May, she'd been put on a performance improvement plan. She cried about it at home, and I held her, stroking her hair, telling her it would be okay. "I don't understand what I did wrong," she sobbed. "Sometimes companies need scapegoats," I said softly. "It's not fair, but you'll get through this." Julian started getting worried about money. I saw the strain on his face, watched him checking his investment app obsessively. "Market's been brutal lately," he mentioned one day. "Yeah, I've been playing it safe," I said. "Not a good time to be aggressive." Wish I'd done the same. I wanted to laugh, wanted to tell him that I was the market, and the market was punishing him for fucking my wife. But I didn't. I just nodded sympathetically and went back to work. Step 2. Isolation. Julian and Sarah's relationship thrived in secret. It was exciting because it was forbidden. So I decided to make it complicated. I started planting seeds. Casual comments to Sarah about how Julian seemed stressed lately. Observations about his mood swings, questions about whether he seemed himself. "You see him every day at work," she said. "Is he okay?" "I don't know, he's been distant. I'm worried about him." To Julian, I expressed concerns about Sarah, how she seemed unhappy, how I worried our marriage was in trouble. "She's just stressed about work," Julian said, his face carefully neutral. "Maybe. I feel like she's pulling away, like there's something she's not telling me." I watched the guilt flicker across his face, watched him swallow it down. "I'm sure it's nothing, man, just the job stuff getting to her." These conversations created pressure, made them paranoid. They started fighting more. I could see it in their messages. Sarah to Julian. "Nathan's asking questions. I think he's suspicious." Julian to Sarah. "About what specifically?" Sarah to Julian. "Us. He asked if I thought you seemed different lately." Julian to Sarah. "What did you say?" Sarah to Julian. "That you seemed fine, but I'm scared. What if he knows?" Julian to Sarah. "He doesn't know. He would have said something." Sarah to Julian. "Would he? Nathan's not confrontational. He might just be gathering information." Julian to Sarah. "You're being paranoid." Sarah to Julian. "And you're being dismissive." They were turning on each other, slowly, carefully, but it was happening. Perfect. By June, everything was in place. I had complete financial profiles for both of them. I had documented every instance of the affair, every hotel, every lie, every deleted message recovered from the cloud. I had leverage over their careers, their money, their reputations. I had built a case that would have made Patricia Delgado proud, and I was ready to execute. But I needed one more thing, the perfect moment. That came on June 15th, 2020. Sarah told me she was going to a marketing conference in Chicago for the weekend. I'd seen the invitation in her email, it was legitimate, but I'd also seen her messages with Julian. Sarah to Julian, "Conference is the perfect cover, 3 days together, no hiding." Julian to Sarah, "I'll book the hotel. Same area, different hotel from yours. We can be careful." Sarah to Julian, "I can't wait. I need this. I need you." They thought they were being so clever, using the conference as cover. Meeting in secret in a city where no one knew them. I told Sarah I thought the conference was a great opportunity. Told her to have fun, kissed her goodbye at the airport. Then I called in sick to work. Told Julian I had food poisoning, and I booked a flight to Chicago. I didn't confront them in Chicago. That would have been too easy, too clean. Instead, I documented everything. I found their hotel. Julian had charged it to a credit card I had access to. I watched them check in separately, watched them meet in the lobby, watched them kiss in a way that made my chest physically hurt. I took photos, video, time-stamped, geotagged evidence. I followed them to dinner, to the conference events where Sarah introduced Julian as a colleague from a partner firm, to the bars where they drank and laughed and touched each other like they had every right to. I hired a private investigator to get additional footage. Wanted to make sure I had every angle covered. By the end of the weekend, I had irrefutable proof of the affair. The kind of documentation that would stand up in any divorce court, any workplace investigation, any context where truth mattered. But more than that, I had clarity. Watching them together, seeing how happy they were, how natural, it crystallized something for me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a relationship, a real one. They loved each other, and that made everything so much worse, because it meant every moment they'd spent with me over the past year had been a performance. Every "I love you" from Sarah, every "you're my brother" from Julian, all lies. I flew back before they did, was waiting at home when Sarah's flight landed. "How was the conference?" I asked when she walked in. "Good. Exhausting. I missed you." She kissed me. I tasted the lie on her lips. "I missed you too," I said. That night I made my final preparations. Tomorrow I would start the end game. Tomorrow they would learn that betrayal has consequences. I waited until Monday, wanted them relaxed, unsuspecting. I got to work early. Before Julian arrived, I went into his office. I had his computer passwords, had for months. I logged into his email and I sent a message to Patricia Delgado. The message was from Julian's account, but the words were mine. "Patricia, I need to inform you of a serious conflict of interest. For the past year, I've been in a personal relationship with Sarah Reeves, Nathan's wife. I should have disclosed this earlier, but I failed to do so. I'm coming forward now because I believe it's the right thing to do. I understand this may have implications for my employment, and I accept full responsibility. Julian Vance." I sent the email, then I deleted it from his sent folder, cleared the trash. 30 minutes later, Julian walked in. He smiled when he saw me. "Feeling better?" "Much. Thanks for covering on Friday." "Of course, man, that's what I'm here for." An hour later, Patricia called both of us into her office.
Julian looked confused. I played along. Patricia's face was granite. She printed out the email. Julian, is this accurate? Julian's eyes went wide as he read it. I didn't write this. It came from your email account. I know, but I didn't send it. Someone must have hacked. So you're denying that you're in a relationship with Nathan's wife? The silence was deafening. Julian's face went through several colors. He looked at me. I kept my expression carefully neutral. He couldn't finish the sentence. We need to discuss this further, Patricia said. Nathan, please step outside. I did, sat in the hallway while my best friend's career imploded. 30 minutes later, Julian emerged. His face was ashen. He looked at me. Did you do this? Do what? You know what? I don't know what you're talking about, Julian. I just got called in with you. What's going on? He opened his mouth, closed it, walked away. That afternoon, he
was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into the conflict of interest and whether he'd violated any company policies. I went home early, found Sarah making dinner. How was work? She asked. Interesting, Julian got put on leave. Her wooden spoon clattered against the pot. What? Why? Something about a conflict of interest. They wouldn't tell me details. I watched her face carefully, saw the panic she tried to hide. That's crazy. He's so professional. I know, I'm worried about him. He's my best friend. Sarah turned back to the stove. I saw her hand shaking. That night, she got a text from Julian. I watched her read it in the bathroom, watched the colour drain from her face. Julian to Sarah. We need to talk. Emergency. Call me when you can. She didn't call. She was too smart for that. But I could see the fear in her eyes when she came back to bed. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just work stress. Want to talk about it? No, I'm okay, just
tired. She lay down next to me, but I could feel the tension radiating off her body. I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness. The next phase took a week. I filed for divorce, didn't tell Sarah, just went to a lawyer, brought all my documentation, and started the process. The lawyer's eyes went wide when she saw what I had. This is comprehensive. I'm a forensic analyst. Thoroughness is what I do. Well, you'll have no problem with the divorce. With this kind of documentation, she won't get anything. Infidelity is relevant in this state. Good. I also provided copies of all the messages between Sarah and Julian to HR at Sarah's company, anonymously, along with a note explaining that Sarah had been using company time and resources to conduct an affair. 2 days later, Sarah was fired. She called me sobbing. They let me go. They said I violated company policy, but I don't understand what I did. Oh my God, baby, I'm so sorry. Come on, we'll figure this out. When she
got home, I held her while she cried, told her everything would be okay, made her tea, stroked her hair. I feel like everything's falling apart, she said. I know, but we'll get through this, together. She clung to me, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. That night, after she fell asleep, I moved to the next step. I'd set up a meeting with Patricia Delgado, told her I needed to discuss something sensitive. I've been doing some thinking about Julian's situation, I said. And I realized something. If he's been in a relationship with Sarah this whole time, he's had access to privileged information about our cases through me. Anything I discussed with my wife he could have known about. Patricia's face hardened. Are you suggesting he violated client confidentiality? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just pointing out that the potential was there. And given that he didn't disclose the relationship, we have to consider whether other ethical violations occurred. Do you have any evidence? Not yet, but I think it would be worth investigating his case files. See if there are any irregularities. I knew there wouldn't be. Julian was too good at his job for that. But the investigation itself would be damaging. It would drag on for months. It would destroy his reputation, even if they found nothing. Patricia nodded slowly. I'll bring this to the board. Thank you for raising it, Nathan. I know this can't be easy for you. He was my best friend, I said quietly. But integrity matters more than friendship. That's a mature perspective. I left her office feeling like I'd just won a chess match. Julian figured out it was me about a week later. He showed up at my house at 10 p.m. Sarah was upstairs, asleep. She'd been taking anxiety medication since losing her job, and it knocked her out. I opened the door. Julian looked like he'd aged 10 years. We need to talk, he said. Sure, come in. We went to the kitchen. I poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one across the counter to him. You're destroying my life, he said. I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb, Nathan. The email, the investigation. You're behind all of it. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. I know you know about Sarah and me. I know you've known for a while. I took a sip of whiskey. How long? What? How long have you been fucking my wife? The blunt words hung in the air between us. Julian's face crumpled. About a year. I'm so sorry, Nathan. I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen. Again and again for a year. I know it's unforgivable, but I love her and she loves me. Does she love you enough to lose everything? Her job, her marriage, her reputation? What have you done? Me? I haven't done anything. I just made sure the truth came out. You and Sarah made your choices. Now you're dealing with the consequences. Julian stood up. You're sick. You're sabotaging us. No, I'm just ensuring that everyone knows
exactly who you both are: liars, cheaters, people who destroy the trust of those who love them. I never wanted to hurt you, I laughed. It sounded bitter even to my own ears. But you did. Every single day for a year, you hurt me. You just made sure I didn't know about it. What do you want? What can I do to make this right? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. You made your choice when you decided my wife was worth more than my friendship. Now live with it. Nathan, please, I'm begging you, stop this. I'll resign from Meridian. I'll leave town. Just stop. It's already too late for that. What does that mean? I finished my whiskey. It means I've spent months building a case against you and Sarah. I have documentation of everything, every lie, every hotel room, every deleted message, and I've made sure that everyone who matters has access to that information. You're insane. No, I'm thorough. There's a difference. Julian stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I don't even recognize you. Good. Because the person you knew, the person who trusted you, who called you brother, that person died the day you decided to betray him. What's left is someone who believes in consequences. Julian left. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into the night. Upstairs, Sarah slept on, unaware that her world was about to collapse entirely. I served Sarah with divorce papers the next morning. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through job listings on her laptop, when the process server knocked on the door. Her face went white as she read through the documents. Nathan, what is this? It's divorce petition. I'm divorcing you. What? Why? We can work through whatever's wrong. I know about Julian. The silence that followed was absolute. I don't know what you. I pulled out my phone, showed her one of the photos from Chicago, her and Julian kissing in the hotel lobby. She started crying. How long have you known? Months. I've known for months. And you didn't say anything? No, I gathered evidence instead. I built a case because that's what I do. You're a monster. I'm a monster. I'm not the one who spent a year fucking my spouse's best friend. I made a mistake. I was weak. But we can fix this. No, we can't. Read the papers, Sarah. I'm filing on grounds of adultery. I have more than enough evidence. You won't get the house. You won't get alimony. You'll be lucky if you don't end up owing me money. I'll fight this. With what lawyer? You're unemployed. You have no income. You have credit card debt and no savings. But please, try. Every dollar you spend fighting this is a dollar you don't have for rent. I watched the realization hit her, the understanding that she was trapped. I loved you, she whispered. No, you loved the stability I provided. You loved having a husband who worked hard and came home every night and didn't ask questions, but you didn't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have destroyed us. And Julian, what did you do to him? Julian destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Sarah's hands were shaking. You planned all of this. You've been sabotaging us. I've been ensuring accountability. There's a difference. You're sick, Nathan. This isn't normal. Normal people don't do this. Normal people don't fuck their spouse's best friend for a year and then act surprised when there are consequences. I left her sitting there, crying over the divorce papers. That afternoon, I moved my things to a furnished apartment I'd rented. Left Sarah in the house, for now. The divorce would settle who got what. I called my parents, told them what happened. They were shocked, supportive, angry on my behalf. What are you going to do? My mum asked. I'm going to make sure they understand that actions have consequences, I said. And then I'm going to move on with my life. But I wasn't done. Not yet. There was still one more
piece to implement. The financial ruin was the final phase. Julian's investment losses had been just the beginning. Over the past months, I'd been slowly, carefully building a web of financial consequences. I'd used Julian's identity to open several lines of credit. Nothing illegal, I just used information I already had access to through our work. Applied for store cards, small loans, things that wouldn't trigger fraud alerts but would damage his credit score. I'd made strategic trades in his investment accounts, bought into positions that I knew from my own research were about to tank. Timed the market against him. By July, Julian's net worth had decreased by about $40,000. His credit score had dropped 90 points. He was getting calls from collection agencies about debts he didn't remember taking on. He tried to report it as fraud, but the problem was he couldn't prove it. The applications had been submitted from his computer using his credentials with knowledge only he should have had. The investigators looked at the evidence and concluded he'd made bad decisions, not that he'd been hacked. For Sarah, the financial pressure was simpler. She couldn't find work. Every time she got to the final round of interviews, the company would mysteriously pass on her. I knew why. I'd been sending anonymous emails to HR departments. Nothing defamatory, just copies of her termination letter from her previous company. Questions about her professional ethics suggestions that they might want to do additional reference checks. It was amazing how effective a whisper campaign could be. By August, she'd burned through her savings, started borrowing from her parents, moved out of our house, and into a studio apartment in a bad part of town. Julian tried to help her financially, but he was drowning himself. He'd lost his job at Meridian. The ethics investigation hadn't found proof of wrongdoing, but Patricia decided his continued employment was not in the firm's best
interest. He tried to find work in the industry, but forensic analytics is a small world. Everyone knows everyone, and word had spread about the conflict of interest, the affair, the ethics investigation. No one wanted to hire someone with that kind of baggage. Last I heard, he was working as a general accountant for a small firm, making half what he used to earn. Sarah eventually found work too, administrative assistant at a non-profit, a job she was overqualified for, paying a fraction of her previous salary. They stayed together though, Julian and Sarah. Through all of it, they held on to each other. Part of me admired that. Part of me hated them for it, because it meant they got to keep the one thing I'd wanted to destroy, their relationship. But I reminded myself that wasn't the point. The point wasn't to break them up. The point was to make sure they paid the price for what they'd done. And they had paid. In reputation, in career, in financial stability, in the comfortable life
they'd taken for granted while they were lying to me. They'd paid, and they would keep paying. That had to be enough. The divorce was finalized in October 2020. I got the house, the savings, the car, everything we'd built together. Sarah got nothing except her clothes and personal items. The judge took one look at the evidence I presented and ruled in my favor on every single point. I sold the house immediately. Didn't want to live somewhere filled with memories of her. Used the money to buy a condo downtown, started over. Work was awkward for a while. Everyone knew what happened. I became the guy whose wife and best friend had an affair. People didn't know how to act around me, but Patricia promoted me, made me a senior partner, told me my handling of the situation had shown integrity and strength. I threw myself into work, took on the hardest cases, worked 70, 80-hour weeks, made myself indispensable. It helped. Staying busy helped. But late at night, alone in my new
condo, I'd think about Julian and Sarah. Wonder if they were happy. Wonder if they ever talked about me. Wonder if they felt guilty, or if they'd convinced themselves they were the victims in all this. I'd check on them sometimes. Social media, public records. Old habits die hard. Julian's LinkedIn showed he was still at the small accounting firm. Sarah had moved to the non-profit's marketing department. They'd moved in together, a one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was up and coming, which meant cheap. They'd posted photos together, smiling, happy, or at least pretending to be. And I'd feel that cold satisfaction again. Because they might be together, but they were together in the ruins of what they'd destroyed. They'd chosen each other over everything else, and they got each other, but they lost everything that mattered. It's been 3 years now since everything came apart. 3 years since I discovered the affair. 3 years since I systematically dismantled their lives. I date sometimes. Nothing serious. I'm not sure I'm capable of trusting anyone that way again. The thought of opening myself up, of being vulnerable, makes me physically ill. My therapist says I have trust issues, intimacy issues, that I need to process the trauma and move forward. But here's the thing, I don't feel traumatized. I feel vindicated. I proved that I was smarter than them, that their betrayal, as devastating as it was, wasn't the end of my story, that I could take the worst thing that ever happened to me and turn it into a demonstration of controlled, methodical power. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if the revenge was disproportionate to the crime. But then I remember the messages, the lies, the way they talked about me like I was just an inconvenience to be managed. And I think, no, they earned every consequence, every lost job, every financial struggle, every moment of stress and fear and uncertainty. They made their choice. I just made sure that choice
Had a cost. Last week I saw Julian. Pure chance. I was getting coffee at a place downtown and he walked in. We locked eyes. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked over. Nathan? Julian? We stood there, two men who used to be brothers, now strangers bound by shared destruction. How are you? He asked. Good. You? Managing. Silence. What do you say to someone who betrayed you, who you destroyed in return? I'm sorry, Julian said finally. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. What we did was wrong. You deserved better. I studied his face. He'd aged, stress lines around his eyes, grey in his hair that hadn't been there before. Yes, I said. I did. I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I needed to say it. Okay. Sarah wants to reach out to you two to apologize. Tell her not to. Julian nodded. Okay. I understand. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, he said. What you did, the revenge, it was brilliant. Terrifying, but brilliant. I
never saw it coming. None of it. That was the point. I know, I want you to know that I understand why you did it, and I don't blame you. I don't need your absolution, Julian. I know, but you have it anyway. He left. I watched him go, this ghost of my former best friend. And I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pain, just emptiness where he used to be. I'm writing this now because my therapist suggested it might help with closure. She wants me to process what happened, to work through the complicated emotions around betrayal and revenge. But I don't have complicated emotions. I have very simple ones. Julian and Sarah betrayed me. They made a choice to value their desires over my dignity. They lied systematically and extensively for a year. And I made sure they paid for it. I don't regret what I did. Every action was justified. Every consequence was earned. If anything, I regret that I ever trusted them in the first place, that I was naive enough to
believed that friendship and marriage meant something. That loyalty was more than just a word people use when it's convenient. The person I was before the betrayal, the trusting, optimistic Nathan who believed in the goodness of people, he's gone. Murdered by the two people he loved most. What's left is someone harder, colder. Someone who understands that trust is a weakness and that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. My therapist says this is unhealthy, that I'm letting the betrayal define me, that I need to find a way to move forward, to open myself to connection again. But I have moved forward. I have a successful career, financial security, a life that's mine, untainted by people who would use it against me. If that means I'm alone, so be it. Alone is safe. Alone is honest. Alone means no one can destroy you from the inside out while smiling to your face. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the moment I realized what they were doing. That sick feeling in my
stomach. When the patterns clicked together, the evidence aligned, the truth became undeniable. I think about how, in that moment, I had a choice. I could have confronted them, could have raged and screamed and demanded answers, could have kicked Sarah out, cut Julian off, and moved on with the messy, painful process of rebuilding my life. That's what most people would have done. But I'm not most people. I'm a forensic analyst. I solve puzzles. I find hidden truths. I build airtight cases. And when I discovered their betrayal, I treated it like any other case. I gathered evidence. I identified vulnerabilities. I developed a strategy. I executed with precision. I destroyed them the same way they destroyed me, methodically, systematically, with full knowledge of what I was doing. The difference is they did it out of selfishness. I did it out of justice. And that distinction matters to me. It's the only thing that lets me sleep at night. Well, that and the fact that I haven't really,
slept well in 3 years. But that's fine. I don't need sleep. I need to know that betrayal has consequences. And now I do. There's a question I've been avoiding. One my therapist keeps asking. Do you feel better? Did the revenge make you feel better? I always deflect, change the subject, talk about something else. But the truth is, I don't know. The revenge was satisfying in the moment. Watching their lives crumble, knowing I was the architect of their destruction, it felt powerful. It felt like I was taking back control after months of being the victim. But now, 3 years later, I'm successful, I'm financially stable, I'm safe, but I'm also alone. Deeply, profoundly alone, in a way I wasn't before all this happened. I have colleagues, not friends. I have dates, not relationships. I have a life that looks good on paper but feels hollow, and I wonder sometimes if this is what I really wanted. If destroying them was worth what I had to become in the process, because the person who executed that revenge, who hacked accounts, who manipulated systems, who lied and sabotaged and orchestrated ruin, that person scares me a little. That person is capable of anything, of crossing any line, of justifying any action in the name of justice. That person is dangerous, and that person is me now. I can't go back to who I was. The naive, trusting Nathan is dead, killed by betrayal, and resurrected as something harder, colder, more calculating. Some days I think I won, I survived, I came out on top. Other days I think we all lost. Julian lost his career, Sarah lost her reputation, and I lost the ability to trust, to love, to connect with another human being without seeing them as a potential threat. But I made a choice, and I live with that choice every day. I'd probably make the same choice again if I'm being honest, because the alternative, letting them get away with it, moving on without ensuring they paid a price, would have destroyed me just as surely. At least this way, I got to control the destruction. At least this way, I wasn't just a victim. Last night, I had a dream about the three of us. We were back in 2017, before everything fell apart, before the affair, before the lies. We were at my wedding. Julian was giving his speech. Sarah was smiling at me, and I was happy. Genuinely uncomplicated, happy. In the dream, I knew what was coming. I knew about the betrayal, but I couldn't warn my past self. I could only watch as we all smiled and laughed and toasted to brotherhood and love, blissfully unaware of the poison that was already in the wine. I woke up with my heart pounding, covered in sweat. And for the first time in 3 years, I cried, not for what they did to me, but for what I lost, for the friendships and love that used to be real before it curdled into something toxic, for the person I was before I learned that the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you most. I cried for the loss of innocence, the death of trust, and then I got up, got dressed, and went to work. Because crying doesn't change anything. Justice doesn't heal wounds. It just makes sure everyone bleeds equally. And that's enough. It has to be enough. This is the part where I'm supposed to offer some wisdom, some lesson learned, some insight into betrayal and revenge and the cost of both. But I don't have wisdom. I just have experience. I learned that betrayal doesn't always look like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like friendship, like love, like all the things you're supposed to trust. I learned that revenge is cold comfort. It satisfies in the moment but leaves you hollow in the aftermath. I learned that you can win and still lose everything that matters. I learned that the hardest person to forgive isn't the one who betrayed you. It's yourself, for not seeing it coming, for trusting, for loving, for being the kind of person who believed that other people's promises meant something. I'm still learning that last lesson, still
Struggling with it every day, because the thing about revenge is it doesn't erase the betrayal. It doesn't undo the damage. It just makes sure everyone suffers equally. And maybe that's justice, maybe that's fair, but it's not healing. It's not closure. It's just, even if you're reading this and you've been betrayed, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you if revenge is worth it, if the cost is justified, if destroying the people who destroyed you will make you feel whole again. All I can tell you is my truth. I made them pay. I made sure they understood that betrayal has consequences, that you can't lie to someone for a year, destroy their trust, and walk away unscathed. And it felt good. In the moment, it felt powerful and right and just. But 3 years later, I'm still alone, still unable to trust, still defined more by what was done to me than by who I could have become. Julian and Sarah destroyed my marriage and my most important friendship. But I destroyed something.
2. I destroyed my own capacity for vulnerability, for connection, for the kind of love that requires you to give people the power to hurt you. I protected myself so thoroughly that now I'm invulnerable. And invulnerability, I've learned, is just another word for lonely. I saw Sarah last month. Another chance encounter, this time at a grocery store. She looked different, older, but also lighter somehow, like she'd put down a weight she'd been carrying. She saw me, started to walk over, then stopped. We stood there, 15 feet apart, surrounded by produce and strangers. She mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I nodded. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. She left. I finished my shopping. That night I thought about calling her, about asking all the questions I'd never asked, about finally having the confrontation we'd never had, where I screamed and she cried, and we both said all the things we'd left unsaid. But I didn't call, because what would be the point? She's sorry, I believe that. She and Julian both paid the price for what they did. They lost their careers, their money, their reputations. They learned the lesson I wanted them to learn. That betrayal has consequences, but knowing that doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't heal the wound. It doesn't bring back the person I was before I learned that love and friendship can be weapons. It just is. The thing about revenge is that it's a story with a beginning and a middle, but no real end. The beginning is the betrayal. The middle is the planning and execution, the satisfaction of watching your enemies fall. But the end, there is no end, because revenge doesn't close the chapter. It just starts a new one, a chapter where you're defined by what you did, by the person you had to become to do it. I'm 3 years into that chapter now, and I still don't know how it ends. Maybe it doesn't end. Maybe this is just who I am now. The man who was betrayed and who made sure everyone paid for it. The man who
won but feels like he lost. The man who got his revenge but lost himself in the process. I'll leave you with this. If someone betrays you, really deeply betrays you in a way that changes who you are, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you, become bitter and broken and defined by what was done to you. You can move on, find a way to heal, to trust again, to rebuild what was broken. Or you can do what I did. You can make them pay. You can ensure that justice, your version of it, is served. But understand this, whichever path you choose, you'll pay a price too. The price of being destroyed, the price of vulnerability required for healing, the price of becoming the kind of person who can orchestrate ruin. There's no free option, no choice that leaves you whole and unblemished. All you can do is decide which price you're willing to pay. I chose revenge, and I'd probably choose it again, but I want you to know what it cost me. It cost me my ability to trust, my ability to love
without fear. My ability to be the person I was before I learned how much damage one human being can do to another. I got my justice, I made them suffer. I proved that I was smarter, more patient, more capable of destruction than they ever imagined. But I lost Nathan Reeves in the process, the real one, the one who believed in friendship and love and loyalty. That Nathan is dead, murdered by betrayal and buried by revenge. What's left is this: a successful, isolated man who lies awake at night, alone in his expensive condo, wondering if winning was worth what it cost. I still don't have an answer to that question. Maybe I never will. All I know is this: I haven't slept well in 3 years, and I probably never will again. But at least when I close my eyes, I know that Julian and Sarah lie awake too, living with the consequences of what they did. And that knowledge, cold and hollow as it is the only comfort I have left.